Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, all you farmers of information and ideas out there. We are tilling very fertile soil once again today here at Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson, and you get to keep all the fruits of our labour. Check out these juicy fruits from today. In this episode, we've got a way to keep you seismically savvy with Android earthquake alerts, and you'll be able to keep a better eye on the world with a new pair of smart glasses and a brand new generation of home security cameras. And we'll see what the people at Tesla are up to in trying to stay front and centre in the public consciousness in a positive way. All that is in store for us coming up real soon, but not before I welcome to the microphone the man who sows the seeds. Welcome, Matthew Dickerson.
Well, appropriate you're talking about the earth and tilling the soil because I want to briefly mention some archaeology discoveries this week. Or one archaeology
tilling
discovery.
Bones now, are we?
That's right. Yeah, we're really tilling the soil. I had a phone call from one of my children. They said, did you hear the fact that the guy who invented Bluetooth died? And I went, I don't know. That's the story. So it was kind of the story. But if we go back a little bit, back in 1997, there were a few companies getting together to talk about some way of getting different devices to talk. And there were companies like Intel and Ericsson, Nokia, IBM, Toshiba, so some big tech giants around the world. And there was a gentleman from Intel, Jim Kardak, who, just as a bit of a project name, said, we should use Bluetooth because way back in the 10th century, King Harold, spelled H-A-R-A-L-D, Harold Bluetooth Gormson, was known for getting Denmark together with some of their neighbours and bringing Christianity in. So basically, he was a guy that got people
He was a
to
uniter.
Talk. A uniter, yeah, why not? That sounds good. So they went, just as a bit of a project name, this new communication protocol that's going to get different devices to talk to each other, Project Bluetooth, and we'll get around to a proper name later. And of course, here we are 28 years later, and Bluetooth is well known.
It stuck.
It did. And even the logo for Bluetooth is made up of the rune for H or haggle and the rune for B or jargon from the language.
Sorry, was that
jargon? Does it sound?
That'll do me.
So the two runes they combine together.
Scandinavian accent is fantastic.
That's right. So it comes from the H and the B from Harold Bluetooth.
Gotcha.
So that's where the logo. So again, sometimes you're looking for something mysterious or deep and meaningful in a logo, but it was just the initials of Harold Bluetooth's name. The discovery that did happen, of course, was that some archaeologists in Denmark uncovered a Viking Age burial site, so around 10th century sort of time frame, and they believe in that burial site probably would be the bones of King Harold Bluetooth. So there is a linkage there to Bluetooth, but not quite what my daughter thought. But it is interesting, isn't it, how we come up with different names and people just sitting around talking in general going, this will do, and next thing you know, that's a term universal.
Well, it's interesting, how things just stick.
That's right. So be careful. Be careful what you do when you go, that'll do, that'll get us by. And I remember...
Until we come up with something better.
I remember there was a Microsoft Word user manual, and I used to use this when I used to do some training with Microsoft Word, and I used to use this training manual to show people when they're doing things, make sure you don't just stick stuff that's rubbish and put something of some logic, because there was a training manual that in one of the earlier parts of it, like the prefix, if you want to call it that, or the preface, it just had some Latin repeated multiple times for, say, a quarter of a page. And obviously someone later on was going to fill in that, but because there was writing there, it got skipped over each edit, and we'll get around to filling in that, we'll put the proper words in there later, and they published the manual with just this random Latin repeated rubbish in there because no one had ever got around to fixing that up a bit. So the part of that lesson was always, if you're going to put something as a placeholder, put something that at least makes sense. Don't say put other proper text here or put random Latin here. Put something if you were...
Because you'll get found out.
That's right. If you did end up publishing, but that would never happen, but if you did end up publishing, at least there'd be something there of some logic. It might be perfect, but it'll be something in there. Anyway, so yes, it's funny how things stick like that.
All right, we better get down to business. 10 years ago, neighbourhood dogs were exactly that, dogs in the neighbourhood. It was common to see dogs wandering free to poop on anyone's nature strip at will. And just like a 10-year-old kid, they'd be home at dusk in time for dinner. Nowadays, pet ownership comes with a bit more responsibility, so free-roaming pooches probably shouldn't be. Now, if you have a husky Houdini that you can't be 100% of its whereabouts at any single time, then Matt has something for you.
Well, I do, and it's actually close to home, this one, because we had one of our dogs at one stage who we did nickname Houdini because we'd open the gate to go out and there's our dog outside the gate. How did you get out here? We thought our yard was pretty well sealed up. So in the end, we basically, with a bit of electrical tape, strapped an air tag to his collar to work out where around the house he was getting out of the house or out of the yard to then be able to seal that particular area up. So that was a bit of a hodgepodge solution. But now we've got the FI Series 3 Plus. They market this, and marketers would never be wrong, would they? They never exaggerate. They market this as the world's smartest AI-powered GPS collar for dogs. There's a few little caveats in there to make sure that they're the only one or the best. So basically it's got GPS built in, it's got cellular technology built in, live location tracking. Essentially it's doing what I did with our AirTag with our dog. We can track where a dog is with this particular collar. So it gets better than that though, but because it's AI powered, it can do other things. For example, it can see how many steps your dog's taken, what distance it's travelled, how long it's slept for. When it barks, it licks, it scratches, it eats, it drinks, and it goes to the toilet. You can track all this information.
Wow.
Why might be another question. I'm not here to answer the why.
The dog might be interested in the step counter and seeing what it's racking up per day.
Well, it gets better than that, James. Funny you should say that because there is an app, and in that app, you can actually track progress of you against your friends' dogs because there's an app leaderboard. Now, it seems unfair that a large dog and a small dog are compared directly, so they're not. You actually have fitness goals compared on the breed of your dog and the age of your dog. So that big dog might need to do 5,000 steps and the small dog, 3,000 steps might be okay, or distance travelled might be different for those two. Maybe the step count's the same because they've got long steps and short steps. So it's something, to me, it would be something you would use to see where your dog is. You go to work for the day and you think your dog's at home, but maybe he's got a girlfriend around the corner, so might go and visit her during the day and work out where to get out of the yard. So you might want to track that sort of thing. The collar's IP68 waterproof rated, so you could probably go for a quick splash in the river if you take your dog down to the river. It can handle that type of thing as well. 24/7 wear, 3 months it'll get out of one charge, which is pretty important. Not sure how good the dogs are at charging their collars, so you want something that make it easy to charge. But the way they do that is we say, well, make my phone go for 3 months if you can make a collar go for 3 months, but it doesn't do updates as regular as your phone, for example. So it's giving you updates on a semi-regular basis, but you can actually ask for updates as well, which it then goes out looking for it. So the way it conserves battery power is not to give you second-by-second update unless you ask for it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so quite interesting. I can see lots of dog owners who go, you know what, I wouldn't mind knowing where my dog was or is at any point in time. I can see lots of dog owners using this.
Well, I mentioned 10 years ago. I meant to say 40 years ago. It was like back in the 80s. You just have dogs roaming the neighbourhood all over the place.
Yep.
And people just sort of just accepted it. And it was just the way things were. But now, everyone's got to have their dog in their yard but dogs do get out, don't they?
They do get out. They do. And it's unusual, isn't it? If you see a dog roaming by itself, you think, what's going on there? Why is that dog there? You just don't see it anymore.
People will stop and get out of the car to make sure that they can help the dog get home.
That's right. And it's interesting when you go to some places, India is one in particular that comes to mind, that you drive around, there are just dogs and cows roaming the streets, and you think it looks a bit confronting because you go, who owns that dog there? And then there'll be like a small pack of dogs, 3 or 4 dogs. Who owns those? And do I want to get amongst them, or do I want to take a wide berth? Because who knows how friendly those dogs are. So it is a bit confronting. In Australia, we don't see that anymore, but in some places, absolutely see them everywhere.
Yeah. But anyway, these dog collars, you'll no longer have a lost dog.
Exactly right.
Have you ever fancied yourself as a bit of an Ethan Hunt, like the Mission Impossible type of guy? Well, we can't guarantee your safety if you're going to leap between 2 skyscrapers, but we do have the coolest pair of glasses, I should say, with inbuilt speakers and a tiny little microphone attached. Matt, I probably built expectations up a little bit during the Universe of Secret Agents, but these specs have got some serious potential, yeah?
Well, there's a couple of stories about specs today, and this one is really focused on people that have got hearing loss but a bit embarrassed about wearing a hearing aid. Now, hearing aids are getting much better, much smaller.
Very
Gone are the
discreet,
days,
yeah.
gone are the days where you'd see this big unit on the back of the head and you'd talk to someone who spoke a bit differently because they're hearing the sounds come in a bit differently, therefore they're speaking a bit differently. Hearing aids are so much better, but still people don't want them for a range of reasons. Sometimes the expense, sometimes the stigma attached to it, sometimes they just don't feel comfortable with it. But glasses, so we have hearing loss. We don't always feel comfortable putting a hearing aid on. We have eyesight loss or degradation, and we also are comfortable wearing glasses. So for whatever reason, glasses are okay, hearing aids not so much.
Well, there's a lot that goes into glasses design as well, and so people use them as a bit of a fashion statement too, so there's a bit of potential there.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. And people wear sunglasses, so they wear them not through eyesight loss, they wear them because they want to look cool and trendy. So I suppose there's part of that in all of that. But this particular concept here is basically saying, well, you're okay wearing glasses, so why not have hearing aids combined with the glasses? So essentially you've got some microphones built into the front of the glasses. You've got a speaker over the ear. So essentially you'll receive the sound in the environment that you're in and it's amplified just above the ear so you can hear a little bit better. No stigma attached to it. No one really notice you've got hearing aids on. No one else would be able to hear it unless they're right beside you. But one of the things I think is impressive, and I've talked to people that have got hearing aids, and this is something that I almost want to get hearing aids just for this feature alone. They've got different settings. So they've got their phone, they've got a Bluetooth connected hearing aid. And I talked to one gentleman one day and he said, if I go into a crowd, I put it on crowd mode. And in crowd mode, it basically cuts out most of the sound around me. And the person I'm looking at, it picks up just the sound from in front. So in a crowded environment, I can talk to you and I can hear you better than you can hear me because your plain old human ears are just picking up every sound that's around them, whereas my special hearing aid is picking up just the sound from directly in front of me.
Yeah, right.
So,
focused and eliminating or cancelling the other noise.
Exactly right. So they're quite clever. So you put it on in different ways, different settings. I think most hearing aids have about 4 different settings, but I'm happy to be corrected on that. But the idea is that you change it depending on the setting you're in. And that's exactly what these glasses will do as well. They'll change, and they do have 4 audio presets for different sounds, and they'll amplify different frequencies. So if you go and just want to have a conversation, humans are fairly limited in their vocal range, so it'll amplify those frequencies. If you're at a rock concert, for example, it might change the frequencies that it amplifies. Or just walking the streets where you want to be aware of cars around you and not walk out on the street and be relying on that sound of a car coming, then you'd change it again to a different audio preset. So that's pretty clever as well. Yeah. But I think the real thing here is that you would put them on, you'd wear them, you might get to the stage where you go, oh, you know what, this is better. I can hear what's going on now. I can have a conversation with people. Yeah. I can participate. Maybe it's time to go and get proper hearing aids. Or maybe you just stick with these because they help you out in your day-to-day life. 8 hours of battery life, which isn't too bad in terms of that. You'll get through a normalish day. Presumably you wouldn't wear them when you're sitting down watching TV. Maybe you do need them, but you just turn the TV up, I suppose. Or when you go to bed, you probably don't need them on as well. So, yeah, not too bad. And you put your prescription lenses. So you've got one device that's helping out with our degradation of sight and hearing all built into one. So it sounds like a pretty good idea to me. Yeah. So for those people who are a bit worried about it, then this is a good solution, I think.
Absolutely. And we're continuing on with another story from the optical tech front today. This one's the latest in smart glasses, Matt.
Yeah, this is from Meta. Now, Meta have had their Ray-Ban Meta, so obviously a partnership with Ray-Ban, and now they've done another partnership with Oakley. So this is basically the next version of the smart glasses, and we joked in previous podcasts about the term that the initial Google smart glass wearers used to have. They were called glass holes because they weren't really that pleasant people that were wearing those. But they're getting more and more acceptable, I suppose, now. So they've got a partnership with Oakley. So part of that is let's get some pretty groovy looking glasses because we want people to go, wow, that look pretty cool, rather than, oh, what are those ugly glasses you've got there? Oh, they're really cool. They do this. It's almost like take the nerd out of it and make them more acceptable. So these are a little bit better than the Ray-Bans. They've got a 3K video camera. So the Ray-Bans only had 1080p, so a bit higher resolution. You've got open-air speakers, but not designed to be used like the last pair of glasses. The last pair of glasses were specifically about voice. You couldn't even play music through the last pair. You couldn't stream music. Right. They were designed just for voice enhancement. These are designed as open-air speakers to use the way you'd use normal in earbuds or over-the-ear speakers or headphones, where you can use them to do whatever you want, play music if you want, but most importantly, you can use it to ask AI stuff. So you can basically have a conversation with AI, and so they've got meta AI integration, not surprisingly. So you can get visual assistants, you can translate language. So I've done it before. I pull out my phone and look at a foreign language on a menu, for example, and it will translate for me. But how much easier would it be if I just looked at it and I said, translate the menu for me? And I've got Meta AI in the background doing the hard work for me. So additionally, you've got all of that, I suppose, where you've got something that you've just got on the whole time. You've just wearing it around, and you start to become used to the fact that you've just got this assistant hovering on your shoulder. I think of Disney cartoons where you have the good guy and the bad guy on each shoulder. You've just got AI in the background telling you what's happening.
Ethan Hunt / Tony Stark.
It is, isn't it? It's getting like that. So I just imagine sometimes you see people walking down the street with a headphone or an earbud in, and it's on the other side. So they're chatting away to someone, and you think, are they talking to me or who are they talking to?
I know.
And I think this would be a bit the same, except now there's no earbud on either ear, but they're talking and they're saying things like, oh, what's that building in front of me? Or what does this sign say? Can you translate this sign for me? You're going, who is that guy talking to?
Yeah, one of the key signs of madness has now become something else.
Quite normal, that's right. It's either this guy's crazy or he's got some cool glasses on. So it is quite interesting, but we're getting there. We've got competition amongst these various manufacturers, big tech giants, making these glasses, getting better all the time. I love the idea of just seeing these progress more and more. About 8 hours of battery life out of these as well, so get you through a kind of a normalish day, and then you've got a charging case to keep charging up. I don't like it when they quote how many hours of battery life you get with the charging case, because when you charge with a charging case or charge plugged into a power point or whatever, you can't use them. You can't wear the glasses in the charging case. So they quote 48 hours of power in the charging case, but that's not much good to me. 8 hours of usage is what's good to me. So stop quoting that way, will you? You've got different frame colours, different lens types. You've got a new Oakley O-Matter material, 25% lighter and twice as strong as traditional acetate. So they sound like pretty good glasses in general, but more importantly, I think you've got this concept where you'll be having a chat to your good friend AI somewhere out there.
Now, in the event of an earthquake, you have just seconds to act to avoid catastrophe. And in situations where every second counts, an early warning may be the difference between life and death. And Android phones are now boasting that they can detect quakes and warn users in over 100 countries, Matt.
Yeah, including Australia, which is good.
Yeah.
So
although Australia doesn't have that many nasty earthquakes, too.
We have a little tremor every now and again. So it's actually interesting. It's one of these great examples of what I would call citizen science or maybe crowdsourced information, where you've got all of these devices out there. How can we use them for good? And
well, I'm wondering, because detecting earthquakes is a very tricky thing. They just happen suddenly and at random.
Yeah.
So how do you predict that?
Well, they're not trying to predict. They're trying to give you early warning. So those seconds that you mentioned in your intro,
right.
That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get to the stage where there's an earthquake happening nearby, and so you get the warning. So you've got a few seconds to maybe get out of the old building that you're in, get to a certain spot. I guess, and don't take this as any expert advice here, I guess the safest place for me to be in an earthquake would be not in a building. I would tend to feel like being in the open air, unless it's so bad that the earth opens up around me. I reckon standing out in the open would be the safest. In a building feels to me like maybe that building could fall down.
Well, they talk about finding doorways or tables and hiding under tables and stuff like that. But that's, I'm with you. I'm heading for the outdoors.
That's right. And if someone said you've got 5 seconds, there's an earthquake coming, then I'd probably make a quick decision. Can I get outside this building in 5 seconds? Oh, no, I'm on the 3rd floor. Probably not. Yeah. Then let's get to maybe a doorway or a table, or just say prayers, whatever it might be.
I have a friend who actually stood in a window in Turkey with an earthquake going, trying to just sum up whether or not he was going to make the dumpster outside. He was about 3 or 4 floors up, and and it stopped. It stopped shaking just as he was about to make that final decision. Yeah,
very scary. So the idea here is you've got. We had the same example, if you remember, when there was a lunar eclipse occurring. And there was encouragement by some various science bodies to go to that certain spot in America, which was the best spot for viewing, and take photos and upload them to a site, because rather than have 10, 20 scientists, maybe 50 scientists go out and take a few photos, you could have tens of thousands of people take photos, and the phone knew your exact location. It's got a GPS coordinate on that photo, so they could compare all these photos and get more information about it. So using the power of crowdsourcing or citizen science, as I said. So that's the same in this case. You have got millions, upon millions of Android phones out there. And they've all got incredibly accurate accelerometers on the actual phone themselves. Now, they're smart enough to know that if I'm out running, it's not like, oh my gosh, there's a earthquake localized in Matthew's pocket there as it's running, because it's one phone that's running or moving in a certain way. But if they detect...
Well, that's how we use seismographs as well, because we've got a seismograph even in our own school, but it'll detect students' foot traffic walking past. But this is how they work. They're only worried about multiples from all over the place.
Yeah, that's right. So
area.
using multiple sites. So all this information is being fed back to Google, and they say, oh, it looks like there is micro movements. There's millimeters, not millimeters, nanometers. We're talking about they're able to detect the precision on these is nanometers per second squared, so acceleration rather than speed. So nanometers per second squared can be detected by the accelerometer on your phone. So when they detect a lot of phones, hundreds, thousands of phones in an area with these micro accelerations, then they say, well, that's not Matthew jogging. That's something happening across there. So they know there's some movement. Plus, they've also tapped into the various locations around the world that have got a proper seismograph there. So essentially, you've got something to go, there's some established science, and there's all these other people out there, there's an earthquake happening. So then everyone in that area gets a warning about that.
Now, I'm just wondering, if you live near the edge of a tectonic plate, if you jump onto the USGS website, you can actually see what earthquakes have occurred in the last 24 hours, last 7 days, last month or so. You can set out your time frame for the earthquakes you want to check out. So earthquakes happen a lot.
Yeah, right. So does that, you're saying you get to the point where you
So
go,
if you're living somewhere like in New Zealand, you're going to get, there are a lot of little earthquakes that occur, but they would be noticed, I guess, by perhaps this technology. Are you just going to get sick of it and go, oh, it's just...
Here's another warning. Yeah, whatever.
This is my fourth one for the day. Nothing's happened. I'm fine.
Well, maybe there's a setting in there to say only give me ones above a certain level, because because they've got all these ground sensors, I mean, they've got 1,000 ground sensors across the western United States alone, which obviously is a bit earthquake prone. But if you've got some information from those, you can probably see what level it would be at. So maybe, 2s, 3s, don't worry about it. Only give me ones above 4, maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe they've already got that tune to only give you ones that are a bit more serious in the first place. So a good idea. And interestingly enough, Apple doesn't have something similar, which is very unusual for Google and Apple to have things that are a bit different, because as soon as one does it, the other one normally says, right, we better make sure we keep up with the Joneses and go and do it as well. So good idea. And I just think we can get better with collaboration across the world to the point where we can combine this data and see what's happening for the good of all of us, rather than some companies going, right, we'll just use this data for ourselves. So,
100%.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. Home security cameras keep getting better and better and better, with higher resolution for clearer pictures and broader fields of view, and clever in their design to be less obvious to people who have dishonourable intentions. Now, Matt, you have a tidy new unit from Wyze that's ticking all the boxes in home security.
Well, it's ticking a really important box, and that's the installation box. Lots of people say, CCTV, great idea. I want to put that around my house, because it's been proven that burglars come along, see CCTV or see a dog, and they say, you know what, I'm going next door. Yeah. So you're probably not going to stop them. You're just sending them to your neighbours rather than to your place. But if all your neighbours have got that gear, then maybe the burglars finally go, I give up, or they try something and they get caught on camera. But that all sounds fantastic, but you've got to install a camera somewhere, and that becomes a bit of a hassle. There's some good ones now that are run by a battery, but you've still got to charge them up or replace battery or put solar panels in, and maybe it's cloudy for a few days, so not ideal. So Wyze, W-Y-Z-E, Wyze has come up with a concept where they said most people have got some lights on the outside of their house. So why don't we remove those lights and screw in a new light bulb that's got a camera built into it? So it's quite clever, and the only fitting they've got at the moment is the screw type light rather than the bayonet type light. So I'm not sure which is more common, but bayonet, I feel like bayonet is ones I've seen more in my personal experience.
I would have thought the screw-in. I've seen more screw-ins in recent years,
So that, and I'm sure if they've got one and the other one is in demand, I'm sure there's not a lot of manufacturing difference between one and the other. But essentially that means you've got 240 volts in Australia, you've got mains power there at the light. Well, hold on, we could probably use mains power for the camera.
And so it's only screwing in a bulb.
It's screwing a bulb. So you take out your bulb and you're screwing your new bulb, and then at the bottom of that, so it's a normal light bulb, it's an LED light bulb, so good for power, and at the bottom of that, there's a little camera that just sits at the bottom of that. So it's not very large, and it's not the highest definition CCTV I've ever seen. So at 2K, now a lot of the cameras, security cameras, aren't measured in Ks and 2K, 4K type thing. They're often measured in megapixels. So I often see 5 megapixel, 8 megapixel cameras. So 2K is still good quality, but at the lower end of that. But the convenience factor, you screw in the bulb, there's your camera. And obviously they're relying on the fact that people have now got great Wi-Fi in their house and also good internet connectivity. So you screw it in and then you've got two options, or you can do both if you want. You've got a micro SD card that you can put in the actual unit itself. So that records information locally. Now, the only problem with that, of course, is if I'm a burglar and I come along and I see, there's one of those Wyze bulb cams, I'll just take that out because I know the micro SD card's inside, so there's all the data gone. But, of course, it'll do that as well, or instead of taking data into the cloud as well. So then you can look at it from wherever you are remotely. So you're not worried about getting a cable to this camera, not worried about trying to get any power or data cable to it. You just screw it in, connect it to your Wi-Fi. You can see it remotely. You can upload the data to the cloud, or you can have the data on the SD card, or do both at the same time. So it's a good way to make it convenient to stick some security cameras around your house. They've got night vision, of course. They've got all the things you'd normally expect from a camera. Night vision, they've got LEDs that put out some infrared light to give you some night vision in mono, of course, not colour, but just a way to basically give you some extra security. And there's no reason you couldn't use it inside your house, in your garage, that type of thing. I wouldn't say put it in the bedroom. I'm just saying if you had screen light bulbs inside the house, it doesn't have to be outside. They are waterproof, so they are able to go outside. So you can do that. It just seems to me like a pretty good idea to be able to add some security very easily, very conveniently.
Yeah, so convenient.
Yeah.
It's funny that in 2025, the model of a rechargeable stick vacuum cleaner that we use in our house is really awkward and difficult to empty, I've got to say. When I go to do it, it feels like I'm doing it wrong, even though I'm not. I've checked. Now, how was it such an afterthought for the designers how to empty this vacuum cleaner? Well, LG have understood the assignment and they've come to the rescue. They've made the annoying cleaning the cleaner, fumble and wrestle dance a thing of the past, Matt.
You always end up with dust over yourself, don't you? It's
You
like,
do.
I vacuum this.
And I've got to get some sort of stick in there and scrape the dirt out. Like,
I reckon the hardest part is opening the lid. You're pushing in there and you inevitably pop it open and that just sprays dust in the air and you go, I've now got to vacuum up the mess I've made when I'm trying to empty the vacuum cleaner. So it does seem, for all the technology they've built into it, just get that part right, will you? Just somehow make that better. But LG have taken a different solution, and hopefully, my ultimate aim in life is to have Rosie the robot in my household.
Yes,
ultimately, this is getting one step closer, because if we struggle with opening that, surely Rosie the robot is going to struggle and make a big mess when Rosie empties out the stick vacuum cleaner. So LG have come up with a solution. They've got the Cord Zero auto emptying hand stick. Now, I'm a bit disappointed in that because it doesn't make a nice acronym. If they're serious, they've got to come up with a good acronym. That's no better than an initialism, CAEH. I can't make that roll off the tongue. So can you work on that a bit, LG? But apart from that, this automatically empties the vacuum's dustbin for you. So it's got a charging dock, no problems at all. You vacuum away, 17 minutes of vacuuming, you come back, you plug it in to charge up, which you do with all stick vacuum cleaners. You charge it up in some way.
Exactly. Yep.
But when you plug it in to charge it up, it automatically takes the... There's good old iPhone tuning in there. So automatically, when you want to do that, this is my iPhone trying to unlock for me automatically. So when you plug it into your charging dock, it then takes the rubbish from the little container within, takes it out and automatically empties it into the base. Now you say, well, that's no good because I'm going to have the same problem emptying the base as I did the stick vacuum cleaner, but it empties it into a bag in the base that you can easily remove the bag and just throw the bag out as you did in the good old days. Yeah. If you can remember those days when you had a bag, you had a vacuum bag, you had to buy vacuum bags to basically put all your rubbish into. So I think this is a good step because that's easier to do than muck around with that other unit. Plus, you can do multiple vacuumings and not have to worry about emptying it on a regular basis because the bag's much bigger. Because the base stands, it's about 1.1 metres tall. So it's got a reasonable sized bag in there. You can imagine the bag takes up most of that. So you can do it for weeks, I don't know, maybe even months before you need to worry about opening and mucking around with that bag. But the bag's self-sealed, so you're not going to get dust all over you. So it's a good idea. Apart from that, it sounds like a pretty good vacuum cleaner. 2.9 kilograms in weight, 280 watts of suction power, a multi-surface head, so you don't have to muck around switching different attachments for your head between different floor types. You've even got a spare battery. It goes for 17 minutes on one battery, but you have to wait for it to charge up because they've got a spare battery built into the base as well.
There you go.
Swap batteries, that seems to make sense. And then away you go with the next lot of 17 minutes of vacuuming power. So good idea overall, but I just like the idea that you've got one step away from that. And the next step we need to get is then have some way of taking that dust out of the bag and automatically send it off to your rubbish bin somewhere.
That's Rosie's job.
That's Rosie's job. Good work. Thanks, Rosie.
Now, one thing that's coming more and more into the public consciousness is the environmental cost of leaning heavily into AI. Matt, this is another example of how convenience comes at a cost.
It does come at a cost. This is quite an interesting story. The fact that you've got AI using up power. Now, one of the things that I found interesting was that if I go back many, many years, I remember I moved to Sydney as a 17-year-old when I first went to university, and I remember buying a second-hand vinyl record. So showing my age here, it was probably a Cold Chisel record or Bruce Springsteen or something like that. And I remember the woman that served me said, you're from the country. And I'm thinking, wow, do I stand out that much as an old bogan, you know? And I said, well, I am from the country, so can you tell me how you knew? She said, because you used please and thank you, which I thought was quite interesting. You know, mum and dad, it was part of our family. You said please and thank you, so I just kept doing that. I didn't realise in the big smoke you didn't need to say please and thank you, but you probably still can, but maybe it stands out. And so I find myself now, when I'm using AI, saying, could you please, thank you, and I'm thinking to myself, am I just wasting everyone's time by using please and thank you? And then the other thing I started thinking about was, do I worry about spelling things correctly? I'm a bit pedantic about spelling if I'm sending an email to you, but if I'm writing something in ChatGPT and I make a little typo, should I fix it up before I submit send?
I'd be fixing it up.
Or do I let Chat work out what I was trying to say? So these are the sort of things that are important. And then it gets to the actual type of language model. So how much power is being used by different language models? So there are language models that are what I'd call reasoning models. There are other language models that are concise models. And I'm tending to use AI, ChatGPT in particular, as my default search engine. So if I want to know, did Star Wars come out in 1977? I think it did. I'll just check. In the past, I'd go to Google and I'd type it in and I'd get an answer. But now I'm just tending to go to ChatGPT. Am I wasting lots of power? Am I being terrible for the environment?
But Google's using AI anyway.
It is, but it's not quite the same.
Okay, right.
Yeah, it's not quite the same level of reasoning and logic that we put into a query in Google, because a simple query like that is actually quite efficient compared to ChatGPT. So I'll give you an idea. ChatGPT, a normal ChatGPT query consumes about 2.9 watt-hours of electricity. Now, I imagine it would be an infinitesimal amount, but the fact that one little query, me wanting to know when Star Wars was released, uses 2.9 watt-hours, which doesn't sound like a lot, but there's lots of me's out there.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of queries being thrown.
If you did the same in Google, it would generate or use about 0.3 watt-hours, so about 10 times as much to use ChatGPT for a simple query. And so then I started looking at it, what about if I use please and thank you? It's got to process those. Now, ChatGPT themselves have said by people being polite to AI, that alone is costing us tens of millions of dollars. So it's not just me that does that, but that's the thing. It's actually costing money. And then spelling errors, fixing up those as well. There wasn't a figure put on that, but that's actually using more power as well. And it almost comes down to the way you ask AI a question. So, for example, could you please tell me what the weather will be like in Armidale tomorrow, if it's not too much trouble, is a bit less efficient than weather forecast for Armidale tomorrow. Like, we don't need to be verbose. We don't need to be so friendly. We can just get the information we're after.
So, yeah, being rude is going to save the planet.
And it feels like that, doesn't it? If I just walk up to you and said, Weather for Armadale tomorrow. You go, Matt, gee, you're a bit
Back
rude.
your truck up, mate.
That's right.
How are you, by the way?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. So these are interesting things for a start. Do we need to be polite? Do we need to be verbose? No, we should be more succinct in how we do that. But it's also society norms. If I start asking questions like that, I do walk up to you and say, tomorrow, 3 p.m, coffee. And you go, well, does that mean I'm meant to be there? So that's how I'd ask AI. So now I'm asking you that way. But then you get down to these large language models. So if we get onto that a little bit more. So, for example, a reasoning model, and there's a variety of different models out there. These reasoning models generate up to 50 times more CO2 than a concise model. Now, a concise model doesn't give you as comprehensive an answer. So this is part of the challenge. But they look, for example, at the DeepSeek R1 model was one of the models they tested. They tested 14 different ones. 600,000 questions, which doesn't seem like a lot. I mean, it seems like a lot if it was me being asked that many. But when I combine the planet of people asking questions to DeepSeek, I don't feel like it'll take long to get 600,000 questions. And we've got a new SI unit now. The amount of CO2 that 600,000 questions used up was the equivalent of a round-trip flight from London to New York. So it's a new SI unit, round trip from London to New York. So it seems like a fair bit of CO2 is generated just from asking 600,000 questions. Whereas you get the Quen 2.5 model that can answer 3 times as many queries before it gets the same CO2 limit. So the different models we might use are important. So it might get down to the stage of, if you want to know what year Star Wars was released, go to Google. If you want to get a full comprehensive report on some incredibly complicated thing, then sure, go to one of the more complicated AI models and accept the fact that you're going to consume or you produce more CO2, but you're okay doing that because you needed a more complicated answer.
Yeah.
So picking the right tool. So it might not be that we say, oh, yes, I always search using Google, which is what happened in the past. It might be I use Google for these type of queries and I use ChatGPT for these and DeepSeek for those. And so you might choose different AI models depending on the type of query, or you might just be lazy and use the one all the time and who cares about the actual consumption of power, because it is a big issue. The Electric Power Research Institute in America predicts that AI-focused data centers may consume 9.1% of the US energy grid by 2030. Now, even today, it's using 4.4% of the grid. So this is not data centers. This is AI data centers. AI specific data centers are already using 4.4% of the entire US energy grid. So getting to double that or more than double that 9.1% by 2030. So it is an issue, but it's one of those things. How are we going to convince the world to be rude to AI? And we often joke about it. When they take over.
Too hard for some people, but yeah.
Very hard for some people. No, sorry, not very hard for some people. But yeah, when AI takes over, you and I have said to AI all along, remember us, we're the nice guys. We've said please and thank you and we've been nice to you all along. So please be nice to us in return. So it's a fascinating thing. And I know some of the big companies are approaching this problem. Microsoft and Meta, they've invested. We've done a story on one, the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant in the US. Microsoft signed a deal to basically power that back up again, excuse the pun, and get that going just for their AI data center needs. So it's a big issue. So we think we're being more efficient using all this technology, but maybe we're being more efficient in terms of not driving our cars as much, but less efficient in the usage of all of this. So, fascinating.
Yeah,
times.
hidden costs we never really think about. Now, I'm a big fan of technology that comes at a problem from a new angle. Genuine innovation that comes from outside the box. Like this new cement paint that cools buildings passively. It's going to save a mint in summer cooling bills. So how does it work, Matt?
One of the things I think that's important in our climate change society that we're in at the moment and going into full steam ahead is that we want to produce our power in a cleaner way. So that seems to make sense. But there are people working on the flip side of the equation. Let's just use less power. And so that's sensible as well, because the less we've got to produce, whether we produce it with wind or solar or geothermal or whatever it might be, if we've got to produce less, that makes the problem a bit easier to solve.
Yeah.
And LED lights across the world are certainly having an impact there, whether it be street lighting or house lighting, that's certainly having an impact. But this is one as well.
Heating and cooling is a big thing, a big power drawer. And I'm a big fan of this stuff.
20% of electricity in the US is used on fans and air conditioning. 20%. So if we could solve that problem, which I know we're not going to solve it completely, but if we could reduce that problem, that certainly helps. Now, there's a new paint called CCP30, and it's designed to cool buildings using cement-based passive cooling technology. So what it does is it basically retains moisture, I assume from rain, but moisture from the air a little bit as well. And then what it does when sun shines on it, that moisture evaporates. And we know from good old humans that the way we cool ourselves down is we sweat, and then that moisture evaporates. There's an endothermic reaction there. Is that right? Yes, endothermic reaction there. And that then cools us down. So exactly the same concept here for a building that then essentially sweats. It retains some of that moisture and then sweats it out when the sun's exposed to it. And you can basically get to the stage where you're using 10 times less cooling power to keep that building cool. Wow. Now, I'd imagine how far away from the outside you are would be important. So a small building might have different impact to a large building, but they've been running a 2-year outdoor trial in Singapore where they had just normal paint. Then there's some commercial radiative paints that are trying to cool a building down, and then CCP 30. And essentially they found that you were getting electricity savings with the CCP 30 of about 40%.
Wow.
So reducing that quite dramatically.
So I'm thinking about this. Now, Singapore's in a fairly tropical sort of area, a fairly humid sort of air. So your evaporation rates would be decreased in that sort of environment. And then similarly, you'd have issues with in dry areas as well. You've got to get that moisture into the CCP. Yeah, in the first place. But having said all that, it's when you do get the ideal conditions is where you're going to be saving money, and that is probably going to be more often than you think.
Well, I think the reason they would have used Singapore is I thought the same thing. I thought it's fairly humid there, but I think you had enough rainfall. I think it would be the secret to success with this would be put it somewhere where you're getting enough rainfall. So somewhere that's really in the tropics would make sense because you know you're going to get regular rainfall. The humidity is a separate question, and I'm not quite sure how much that plays into it compared to the rainfall. But if you go and stick this in the middle of the desert, when you've got very low humidity and not much rainfall, it may be not as effective. So you put it into the water in the first place for it to retain the water and then let it sweat it out. So the actual base of the paint is a calcium silicate hydrate gel, and you know it's good because it's been modified at the nanoscale level. It's got the word nano in there. It must be impressive. So essentially that's what they're using. It is like a gel, a very thin layered gel that is absorbing some of that water and then basically releasing it through the day.
So, I wonder if there's any concerns about how heavy it gets as well.
That's a good question.
So if you're absorbing water, you're going to get much heavier because water is quite heavy.
You're right. So you're probably wanting to do this on smaller buildings, maybe not skyscrapers, at least in the initial stages.
Yeah, but anyway,
a single-storey building probably could handle that extra weight, whereas a multi-storey building, maybe not so much. So,
I don't want to poo-poo the innovation. I love it, but just trying to think of all the angles.
Yeah, look, you can't go and buy it yet, obviously. This is still in the testing phase, but certainly early results are proving to be pretty good.
Yeah,
and
very cool.
Again, I just wonder what houses will look like in 20 years' time. They'll be 3D printed. There'll be various shapes. They'll have certain wall structures and wall components that are made to cool the house down. Your roof will be made up of solar panel louvers that may be open and closed depending on what's happening with the weather. They'll be incredibly different, I think, to what we see of houses today, all focused around the environment.
And the walls will be painted with sweating paint.
Yeah, that's right.
Not wanting to be left behind by the autonomous Waymo taxis of the US West Coast and struggling to regain some traction after some recent political events in the US, Tesla is making some big moves now in Texas. Autonomous Tesla taxis will start to become more of a feature on the streets of Austin. And of course, Elon Musk has added some Easter eggs for funsies into the marketing as well.
He has indeed. Let me just quote Elon Musk from 2019, and this is the Thomas Edison that I often talk about with Elon Musk, that he makes wild promises and then works out how to deliver on them or not. In 2019, Elon Musk said that there will be 1 million autonomous Teslas on the road by 2020. Not quite.
That was a stretch. In retrospect, we can laugh that off, but
That's
it was
right.
exciting at the time, wasn't it?
It's an exciting promise. To give you the real number, we've got 20 autonomous vehicles on the road by 2025. So in Austin, and Austin's a real breeding ground for autonomous vehicles. In Austin, Tesla's just launched 20 Model Y autonomous vehicles. These are taxis. They've got a certain zone they can be used in, so they're geo-fenced around a certain zone. And this is what we see with robo-taxis around the world. Wherever they are, they're not go-anywhere taxis. They're basically trained up on a smaller area so they can be really accurate around that smaller CBD type area. And they know those roads inside and out and back to front, and they're trained up on those roads so they can't just go anywhere. So even though these are autonomous, they're still not as good as a human. They can't just get in a car and drive and keep driving. They can only go to a certain area. So they've got these in a certain area in Austin, Texas. Each ride costs a flat fee of $4.20. And again, that's the Easter egg you mentioned there, the reference to 420, which Elon Musk often talks about in terms of drug or a particular drug there called 420. So the idea here is they've got a safety monitor, a person, a real human, in the front passenger seat, not in the driver's seat. So I think that's to make you feel more comfortable, but then if something goes wrong, I probably want them in the driver's seat. So they can scream just like I can scream in the back seat from the front passenger seat. So they're only operating from 6 a.m. to midnight. One of the big issues, and this is an ongoing debate around Tesla and other self-driving vehicles, Tesla relies on their 8 cameras. Other vehicles rely on multiple cameras and LiDAR. So that you're not just seeing various things, you're also sensing things, bouncing things back, bouncing a signal back. And we saw that one in some episodes ago where there was a fake wall built with a painting on it. Yeah, and it was just a foam wall, but the Tesla drove straight through it, whereas other LiDAR vehicles didn't drive straight through it. This is pretty important for Tesla's future, so they say. They say that this will help them get from their current market cap of $1 trillion, is the current market cap of Tesla, up to $10 trillion in the future based on autonomous driving, people buying autonomous vehicles, and also this whole business of having robo-taxis out there. But there's a fair bit of competition. And let's say in Austin, there are obviously slightly different rules in Austin or in Texas there because you've got a variety of companies that are there already that are already doing that. So you've got Waymo, you've got Zoox, you've got Volkswagen, you've got Avride. They're all doing autonomous vehicles, autonomous taxis, robo-taxis in Austin at the moment. So obviously Texas lawmakers have decided that we want these vehicles here, so let's bring them on and make us a testing ground, which is fantastic. Let them work it out there and then go around the rest of the place. But Waymo at the moment, they're so far in front. They're doing 250,000 paid rides per week across Austin, plus they're in Phoenix and San Francisco. So
yeah, I will say that it's odd that they decided Texas was where they were going to kick off.
Yeah, I assume it's just down to the laws. I assume Texas, some lawmakers in Texas said, we want those vehicles here, whereas some lawmakers in other states have said, we don't want them here. So they've made it
But
easier.
again, that's surprising to me, from an outsider's point of view of the lawmakers that are in these various states.
That's right.
But anyway.
So Tesla's also developing 2 purpose-built robo-taxis, the Cybercab and the Robo-Van. Both of those won't have steering wheel or any pedals. So they will only be able to be driven by the actual vehicle itself. So, oh dear, it's getting to the
There's
stage.
a leap of faith right there.
There is, isn't there? Jump in this and you'll be safe with me. So away you go. So surely they could just put like Terminator, you've just got some head that sits there in the front there that looks like it's doing something.
Yeah, Total Recall, I think it was.
Yeah.
And that's all we have today, folks. We've reaped all there is to sow this week. Thanks for another cracking Tech Talk, Matt.
Yeah, no, very happy with that. And I do wonder about these vacuum cleaners. I'm going to go and check those out. And
I was just going to say I'm off to go and vacuum my carpet right
that's
now.
right. I love the robo vacuums, and I've got a couple of those. But I just wonder, there's some robo vacuums that will actually empty them out for you as you go as well. So I just wonder whether you're better off with that or getting my robot to use my stick vacuum cleaner. So I've got to work that one out.
Well, I'm still doing everything manually myself, and that's what I've got to look forward to when I get home. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. It's our favourite little podcast that we like to put together, and we're very, very glad that you've enjoyed it this week. We hope you've enjoyed it so much you'll invite some friends next week. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you a very productive and content week as you work your way through it. Looking forward to our next episode. Until then, take care, and we'll see you then.